Hey folks, this is Kelani. I hope you're all ready to hop into some pre-patch action because patch 8.0 is on the background downloader. If you don't want a lengthy wait when the patch actually hits, be sure that's fully downloaded in the next few weeks. We're still looking at July 3rd or July 10th. The 10th is probably more likely due to a certain American holiday going on next week, freedom and all that good stuff. But for now, let's check out another class and spec going into the next expansion. We had a look at what changed for Fury Warriors, so it's only fair we give Arms a little bit of a looky loo too. So strap in as we go through how an Arms Warrior works and what's changed going forward. Oh, and if you could leave the extra weapon by the door, that would be grand. Only one weapon for Arms allowed, I'm afraid. Arms Warriors were in a bit of an interesting spot in Legion. For a while they were kind of bad, then they were really good, and at the moment they're doing okay, but their Fury Warrior brothers tend to get a little more action due to the frustrations that come with Arms Warrior. Everything is reliant on RNG, which seems to be the Legion expansion in a nutshell, but if you don't have the right legendaries and you don't have a pinch of luck, Arms Warrior can be very slow and dull. Going into Battle for Azeroth, quite a lot of that frustration has been removed, mainly because the RNG elements are being removed too. Let's check out the Arms Warrior base abilities and how everything fits together. First up is Colossus Smash. This ability is what Legion Arms was centered around. Smash the enemy's armor, dealing damage and increasing the damage you deal against the target by 30% for 10 seconds. Going into Battle for Azeroth, you won't be able to reset the cooldown on Colossus Smash, and our mastery has also changed. So 30% is all you're going to get from Colossus Smash, and it's just a reliable, stable damage window cooldown you can plan around. Then we have the most iconic Arms Warrior ability, Mortal Strike, a very powerful strike which deals damage and applies a healing reduction debuff to your target. Mortal Strike also costs 30 rage. We also have Overpower, a fairly standard attack which doesn't cost rage but does have a longer cooldown. Overpower cannot be blocked, dodged or parried and also increases the damage of your next Mortal Strike by 20%, stacking up to 2 times. If you ever find yourself with plenty of rage to spare, you can start using Slam. Costs 20 rage and deals a bit of damage, nothing too special there. Arms Warriors will still be holding on to Execute as well. This can only be used on targets which are below 20% health and costs between 20 and 40 rage. The more rage you spend, the more damage you deal. If the target survives an Execute, 30% of the rage is refunded. For an AoE option we have Whirlwind, costs 30 rage and deals damage to all enemies within 8 yards. Arms Warriors are also special in that they can choose to strike an additional target by using Sweeping Strikes, and Sweeping Strikes is now baseline. For 10 seconds your single target abilities hit one additional target for 75% of the normal damage with a 25-second cooldown, so you can keep that up quite often throughout AoE packs. And then we also have a DPS cooldown, but it's not what you might expect. Bladestorm is sticking around as baseline for Arms Warriors as their only DPS cooldown, on a 1.5 minute CD, and you spin around and around and around while dealing damage to everything within 8 yards. And that's it for the baseline damaging abilities. No other cooldowns to push to increase your DPS sadly, no Battle Cry or Recklessness. That's Fury only going forward. You can pick up 1 or 2 CDs in the talent section, so don't worry too much. I mentioned earlier that the mastery for Arms Warriors has changed. Instead of affecting Colossus Smash, it simply reverted to Deep Wounds. This might seem a little boring compared to some of the other changes, but at least it's just free damage on top of your abilities. Deep Wounds causes damage over time whenever you use Mortal Strike, Execute or Bladestorm. We also have some other passives to go over. The first is Seasoned Soldier. Your critical strike auto attacks generate 30% more rage, which is pretty important because auto attacks are practically the only source of rage you're going to get. The other passive we have is Tactician. This used to reset Colossus Smash and Mortal Strike, but now it only resets Overpower. So once again, Colossus Smash is a reliable damage window which you can plan around. No RNG involved whatsoever. Being a warrior also grants you the ability to charge around the battlefield using charge. Be sure to make good use of this ability because it also generates 20 rage. If charge isn't quite enough movement for you, there's also Heroic Leap. Leap through the air to try and get somewhere cool. Chances are you won't find a path though. We also have Heroic Throw for a ranged attack option when you can't get close to the boss for whatever reason, and a melee interrupt in Pummel to shut up those pesky casters. Victory Rush heals you for a good amount of health but can only be used after you kill an enemy that yields experience or honor. Hamstring allows you to slow any target you want by 50% for 15 seconds, and Berserker Rage allows you to break free of Fear, Sap and Incapacitate effects on a 1 minute cooldown. Die by the Sword increases your parry chance by 100% and reduces the damage you take by 30% for 8 seconds. Intimidating Shout allows you to fear quite a few enemies, just make sure they're not going to run off and aggro more mobs in your dungeons. We have a raid-wide attack power buff called Battle Shout, which I'm sure your party and raid is going to love, and last but no means least we have Rallying Cry. Increase your party or raid's current and max health by 15% for 10 seconds. Pretty standard warrior stuff, and also pretty much the exact same thing as Fury warriors, so there's no fighting between two specs when it comes to utility, at least in the baseline kit. Let's check out what talents add into the mix. Arms warriors will also be getting War Machine. Your auto attacks generate 10% more rage, and killing an enemy grants you 10 rage and increases your movement speed by 30% for 8 seconds. Sudden Death returns to the talent section. Your attacks have a chance to make your next execute cost no rage, be usable on any target, and deal damage as if you spent 40 rage, so max damage. Basically just Elias Stoneheart, but in talent form. The last talent on this row is Skull Splitter, bash in your enemy's skull, dealing damage and generating 20 rage on a 20-second cooldown, so you can opt to have a rage generation ability there on a relatively short cooldown, but you're gonna have to give up the other talents to take it. Down a row we have Double Time, which gives you an extra charge of charge and reduces its cooldown by 3 seconds. Impending Victory allows you to use Victory Rush whenever you want for 10 rage on a 30-second cooldown, and Stormbolt is a single target 4-second stun. Massacre increases the range of execute to 35% health from 20% health. I think this talent will see quite a lot of use. Warriors always did deal crazy amounts of damage during the execute phase. Extending that phase is only a good thing. Fervor of Battle increases the damage of Whirlwind by 10% and causes it to slam your primary target, and we also have Rend, the good old damage over time bleed effect that always seems to be available to warriors in one way or another. Second Wind restores 6% of your health every 1 second when you haven't taken damage in 5 seconds. Bounding Stride gives you a bit more movement by reducing the cooldown of Heroic Leap and causing it to increase your movement speed by 70% after you land, and we also have Defensive Stance, allowing you to trade out 10% of your damage for 20% damage reduction. Collateral Damage causes abilities which also strike another enemy with sweeping strikes to refund 20% of their rage cost. Warbreaker changes Colossus Smash into an AoE, which does pretty much the same thing, except the damage bonus is applied to everything hit. Warbreaker into Bladestorm is going to be a lot of fun. And then we have Cleave, 20 rage cost, short cooldown, strike all enemies in front of you with a sweeping attack. Hitting more than 3 targets also inflicts deep wounds. So, if you want to pretend to be Saurfang still, you can. In for the Kill causes Colossus Smash to increase your haste by 10%, or 20% if the target is below 20% health. Gotta get in that extra execute damage. We still have Avatar, and it does pretty much the same thing. You deal 20% increased damage for 20 seconds, and it generates 20 rage. Deadly Calm is also sticking around, reducing the rage cost of all of your abilities by 100% for 6 seconds on a 1-minute cooldown, just in case you want to go bonkers. On the very last row we have Anger Management. Every 20 rage you spend reduces the cooldown on Colossus Smash and Bladestorm by 1 second, so if you want to get Colossus Smash back more often, you can go with this talent, but once again it's going to be reliable instead of RNG. Dreadnought gives Overpower 2 charges and increases the damage of your next mortal strike by an additional 10%, and the very last talent we have is Ravager. Throw down a Whirling Weapon of Doom, dealing AoE damage and generating 7 rage each time it deals damage. Ravager does still replace Bladestorm, so you can't go Whirlybird while throwing down another Whirlybird. Maybe someday. Overall, Arms Warrior in Battle for Azeroth is just more predictable, and you can plan around your cooldowns much easier. You don't have to rely on RNG to actually deal damage now, though without Colossus Smash and Mortal Strike resetting, it does feel a little bit slower in BFA right now. That might be just a case of being undergeared when compared to our End of Legion tunes, so it might pick up as we start getting more and more gear. At any rate, Arms is going to play slower than Fury, and I think that's actually a good thing. Arms warriors are patient, they hone their blade and wait for the opportune moment to strike. A Fury warrior is a berserker. They probably cut themselves just as much as they cut the enemy as they flail about with whatever sharp object they can find in their opponent's face. That's how I see it anyway. Either way, I see a lot of potential here for Arms Warrior, particularly for rocking some crazy AoE damage. I know Arms Warriors have been causing a few issues for tanks since the tank threat nerfs came into play, mainly because their burst has been really good, but their AoE damage is something else. It can be difficult to keep aggro off an Arms Warrior if they go all out on an AoE pack, so maybe be a little careful in your first few pulls of a dungeon. See what the tank can handle before you rip those mobs to shreds. I would say if you enjoyed Arms Warrior at all in Legion, you'll either love or hate the Arms Warrior in Battle for Azeroth. If you enjoyed the RNG, you'll probably hate the new reliable, consistent playstyle. If you enjoyed the playstyle in Legion but hated the RNG, you're probably going to love Arms' next expansion. Personally, I really dislike any damage windows, but nothing makes a damage window more frustrating than tacking on a boatload of RNG. If your damage depends on your damage window uptime, and that uptime is directly reliant on RNG, that just feels terrible, but thankfully it's gone, so no need to keep thinking about it. What do you think of the Arms Warrior changes so far? How do you feel about the randomness being removed? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. If you want to hop on that train, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.